everyone, and we're back with the Fat as Fuck podcast with season 1, episode 2, Fat Sexual Possibilities. This was put out in March of 2018. There was only one other episode after this, which we will not be reviewing because I have no desire to hear about fat masturbation. I want since the original idea of presenting this was to see like fat sex talk, I figured we would go ahead and cover this. I can't guarantee I'll cover it all. The last episode was really boring. So if this proves to be pretty boring too, I'll probably cut it off early. But let's see how it goes. Uh, and we'll see what they talk about.
All right. Oh my gosh. This is the Fat as Fuck podcast. Hey y'all.
I forgot how poor the audio quality was.
This episode, we're going to start off with a version of the fat sex story I tell at my workshops, and then Sarah and I will talk about it and do our thing. Ever since I can remember, I've been taught that fat was a laughing matter. Attraction to fat women particularly was funny. I remember in first grade sitting in art class, a kid at a table across the room called out to inform everyone that the new kid liked me. And everyone laughed because it was funny that a kid could like me.
No, let's. Oh my god, first grade. First grade. Any talk about any kid liking another is a reason for everyone to have giggles. It's first grade. What the fuck?
In TV and movies, there are no shortage of messages about how undesirable fat women are. For over half of my life, I was convinced I was completely undesirable, that it was impossible for me to be liked. The first guy who asked for my phone number while I was working the McDonald's drive-thru, I laughed in his face because he was with a friend and I was sure it was a joke and I wanted to be the one to laugh before they could. To go from that to where I am today has required a lot of processing. Even once I figured out people could find me attractive, I saw my body as an impediment. Something to overcome. Except for my big tits. Man, that's the only thing I thought I had going for me physically. I depended on those tits. They were my desirability, my femininity, until one day my stomach was bigger than my tits. What adjustment that was. Oh, my boobs, the only thing I had going for me now, eclipsed by my stomach. Well, meeting my first longtime partner helped me go from seeing my body as something to overcome to something that was beautiful, something I could accommodate, if not appreciate. We shouldn't let others' desires define us, but it felt pretty amazing to be in love with someone who loved me and my fat body, rather than someone who loved me in spite of it. It took some time to get used to his appreciation for my fat rolls, my belly, to let him touch those parts of me in passion without feeling immense shame. Validation from someone you love can't be discounted. It's powerful, and it let me see my body in a new way.
So, a lot of what I'm getting, like, I know she wants to blame media, and while media may have had a role in it, let's be honest, she's going through a lot of points in her adolescence, and then like early 20s, and I can't speak for everyone, but my self-esteem was at its lowest during my teenage years and my early 20s. I think that that's a fairly normal experience. I think maybe for her it was centered around her weight because that was the most obvious thing. Um, and it can be centered around a shit ton of different stuff for different people. And to a certain extent, we all have things that we obsess over. The thing that I don't understand is that the weight issue, like when I was in my teenage and early 20s years, I wasn't terribly successful, but I did try to lose weight. I did try doing um things to help me lose weight. And unfortunately, and I think this is the truth with a lot of fat acceptance people is that when you're first trying it, especially in your teenage and early 20s, you don't 100% really know what you're doing. And so you take things too fast, too extreme, and it ends up resulting in failure, not because losing weight is impossible, but because you took the wrong measures for it. And I'm really glad. I mean, I'm in my early 30s now, and I'm really glad I've been trying to lose weight again. It's been an exceptionally slow process after the first 15 pounds. Like I've been struggling to get it to move lower than that. I've been kind of stuck for the past year at around between like 180 and 183. Like I've been fluctuating between uh, those 3 pounds a lot, and I've been having a hard time moving below it. I'm a lot healthier than I was when I was heavier, and I'm even a lot healthier now than I was when I was previously this weight because I'm not sitting and playing video games all day with no movement. I actually have strength now. I have seen benefits. And while I also think, oddly enough, that even though I'm the same weight I was when I first entered college, um, I think I look trimmer now because I've been working out instead of just like not eating as much as I was when I was at my highest weight. I feel like because I've been working out, the weight sits on me differently. And so like those are all things where it's like if you I understand that you had this huge issue around your weight and that was a big source of your insecurity and you kind of blame that insecurity on the external world. And to an extent I understand that feeling. But at the same time, part of it is just I think a natural process of getting older and growing up and you see your insecurity and you how you kind of handle it. I think how you learn to handle these things are what's going to kind of help determine your trajectory a little bit through your adult life. Are you a victim and you're just going to stay there, or are you going to do something about it, you know? I This is why like I hate the fat acceptance of so many diets end in failure and stuff. So many diets end in failure because people take extreme measures too quickly. I think keep trying at it, you refine the process more each time, and you find something that works for you.
The problem, though, was that it was still through his eyes. It was me viewing my body as though he were viewing it. I still lacked sexual agency, especially when it came to my fat parts. That didn't come till rather recently, to be honest. A while after my separation and divorce, after I started having sex with new people. I can tell you the moment it shifted. I was at my friends with benefits house and we started making out in his living room. Eventually, I was bent over the futon and we were going at it, but the angle just wasn't right. It wasn't good. Suddenly, like an instinct, I reached down and I pulled up my lower belly onto the futon. It had been hanging down, but now it brought me up perfectly, like my very own liberator cushion. The angle was perfect, and we continued gleefully. Afterwards, that moment kept spinning through my head. That wasn't something I had done before. Use my fat body as a sexual asset. It fundamentally changed the way I saw my fat body and sex. What else could my fat body do? What other pleasures had been hidden from me all of my life? This kept floating around in my head, working its way in.
The way this is framed is so fucking weird. Like, what aspects have been hidden because essentially, because I saw my fat body as something that was lesser or whatever. But at the same time, to a certain extent, like, we're not getting a great timeline here, but I'm gonna guess that this again happened in late teens, early to mid 20s, where yeah, she's clearly had a few more partners, sexual partners, and maybe she's learning what she likes and what works for her better. Like I just the framing of this is weird.
Into my being. I noticed it when I was laying down one day thinking about masturbating, and I just started touching my belly. I thought, I don't touch my belly enough. And I started touching it and rubbing it and squeezing it. And I began to notice something. And I noticed that when I moved my belly, my mons was stimulated and I was stimulated. So I started moving my belly around more. And I was real turned on. And
Okay, I thought the masturbation episode was next week or like the next one. Like the following episode. I did not sign up for this.
I had an orgasm just from moving my belly around. Like, it was fucking incredible. Just moving my belly. I fucking got off. And it was fantastic. I'd never done that before. I'd known that I had sensations, but you're not supposed to feel those sensations. You're not supposed to feel those good things from your fat body. Later, I had another friend with
This just sounded like she had some weird sexual hangups to me, to be honest. Like, I mean, do I understand the getting off by touching her stomach? No, I gotta be honest, I don't get it. But I mean, if that worked for you, go ahead, girl. Like, I don't even know how to respond to this exactly.
benefits who identified as agender, and thus it was more of a queer sexual relationship, and it was great. They also really, really loved fat bodies, and they loved parts of my fat body that didn't get loved before. I loved their fat body in ways I hadn't loved a fat body before. I saw what fat bodies could be like just laying together without pretense. More recently, I was having sex with my current partner, who is also fat, has a bit of a belly, and I was on the bottom and he was on top, and his belly started to push against my belly in a way that I had not had happen before. It felt amazing. Bellies touching bellies, supposed to elicit shame, right?
Okay, I really shouldn't. Like, I'm trying very much to come at this with a non like judgmental lens, but this, even what she's saying here, has such like a fat fetish quality to it. Like, this wasn't. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting. It wasn't this.
But it felt so great. It was similar to when I was masturbating. Like, his belly would push my belly and it would stimulate me, and it was fucking great. So I've started to see the ways that my fat body can do things for me. We're taught to disassociate with our fat, to ignore it, certainly not feel pleasure in it or because of it. Sure, the fat body has limitations, which differ depending on the body, honestly, but it also contains possibilities. Our fat bodies are sexual assets, and we should consider these possibilities if we can get there.
I don't have as specific moments as so well described as you. I mean, those were some powerful moments. The first time I had a lover that was into my belly, I was always ashamed of my belly. It's like I grew up in the, crop top era. That was like so difficult. I never
So, like, during her whole talk of that whole monologue, the audio quality wasn't like too terribly bad, and then all of a sudden we're in like shit audio quality zone. What happened? What are the differences in the mics that you're using, or like what? What I don't understand how you don't go in and at least try to clean up this audio some.
could be comfortable like that. Although now it's a different story. And I have worn a crop top as a a death patty, but I think me liking my belly was a whole other thing. It wasn't even about looks. It was like I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to enjoy it or even see it as something, I wanted to distance myself from its existence. Even when I felt that I was being fat positive in every other aspect, that was something that I just could not. And yeah, of course, I still have my struggles, but really getting to a point where I saw my belly as sexy, that, I mean, it just feels like a part of your brain opens up. It's pretty awesome. But I definitely also recall the first time I really loved seeing a soft belly on a man. Like, that wasn't something, the person I was married to, he was pretty just naturally toned, I guess. So being with someone who had a softer belly, I don't know why, but that just did something to me. I was just like,
Oh, okay, you like big bellies and you cannot lie. All right. That's fine, but for me, I actually wanted to tune into the he was just naturally toned, I guess. I'm genuinely curious. Did he run? Did he go to the gym regularly? I just don't like the FAs constantly phrasing things like people are just naturally this way. People can be more inclined towards certain body types, primarily based on like hunger levels and natural affinity for activity. However, I don't like the framing that their bodies are just naturally that way when it's far more likely connected to activity and food intake. And the reason why I harp on that is because I don't like the narrative of someone is naturally fat. As in like food plays no role when it 100% does play a role. Like my sister is um naturally a bit more prone to activity than I am. I'm very set. When left to my own devices, I'm very sedentary. Being active is far more of a choice for me. Where she doesn't really like to sit still, she likes to move around a lot. In that case, that's a natural difference between us that facilitates her being a bit thinner than I am and me being a bit heavier than she is, simply because I'm more prone to sedentary activities and she is more prone to moving around. That does not mean that she is naturally thinner than me in the way of like biological processes. It means that her natural inclinations towards activity make her slimmer than me. Does that make sense? I just it I know it's like a fussing with distinctions, but I just don't like the idea because fat acceptance often puts forth stuff of, well, I'm naturally fat and they're naturally thin. It's true that someone it can be more prone to putting on weight given their personality and their hobby preferences. Like it's not that I have the issue with, it's that it's something it's presented like something you can't control. That's what just drives me nuts a little bit.
hot damn. And then I was so into it. And they were kind of like, whoa, is this a thing for you? And I'm like, I didn't know, but it is now. And they were kind of self-conscious about it. And so it's kind of interesting to have that kind of shift myself, on the opposite side of that. Yeah. So just, I kind of feel like I get both sides of it, although I don't know that I've fully appreciated my bellies as, a functional asset to my sex life yet. But it's definitely, encouraging and exciting to think about trying different things in that way. I mean, I think I've been a long-term relationship junkie for so long. Being single the last year has been eye-opening in different ways, but I was lucky to be with people that really appreciated my body in all of its sizes and shapes, because your body does change shape and shift and do weird things over time. But I was really lucky, I think, to be with people who really enjoyed my body and appreciated it in a really, I don't know, respectful doesn't sound sexy, but to me it was, right? Like,
Yeah.
someone is super into your body, but like in the nicest way. They're not like gross about it. I don't know how to explain that. In a way that was, with my own vibe. How about that? I think that helped me too. Is like, even when I was struggling, how they made me feel about it, even in non-sexual ways. Like, they just loved how I looked or how I felt next to them or whatever.
I wanted to ask you, do you have a similar experience with like your boobs being like the locus of like your your fat, like your femininity in your fat body. Because
Yes,
like I really did. I really, that was like, I mean, it was super embarrassing, but I was like voted on the down low. I was like voted biggest boobs in school or whatever, and that was like super embarrassing and demeaning. But also it reinforced this idea that that's what I had going for me.
that's terrible. That was a thing. If that was a thing at the schools I attended, I was unaware, but I was very naive and still am about a lot of things, but definitely about stuff like that as a kid. But my first year of high school, my best friend was known as the school slut, and her boobs were bigger than mine. Now I started puberty very young. I got my period when I was 9, and by the time I was 14, I had D cups. So
Yep.
and I wouldn't even call myself fat back then. I was like a size 10 or 12, but it was already the point where I couldn't fit into the regular girls section, but not quite the women's section. You're like in between. It was like this great frustration for my family to keep me clothed. And it felt like a burden. And to have it start so young really sucked. But yes, my boobs, although I don't know that I would call them locusts, definitely brought attention that I was not prepared to deal with in the neighborhood that I was in as well. I would get catcalled regularly in various languages on my way to the bus to school. And having to deal with grown men talking to you that way when you are so very young is a really terrifying thing. But to have it focused on such a specific part of your body is really tough. And I struggled because I was a tomboy until much later. And so I always tried to hide that part of my body with baggy t-shirts. I wore more athletic style bras. Back then they had the jockey banded bra. Like it didn't have wires. It was just like 2 triangles with an elastic underneath. And I wore those until like they didn't make my size, like until I outgrew them. And I just hated the notion of anything that would lift my boobs and make them more prominent because I was just like, no. But, they didn't have a lot of the bra technology and all.
I will say I don't think that this is so much an issue with fat girl adolescence as much as because I don't think okay, so I think this is more of an issue of girls that develop early. I was someone that developed early. I was she said she was like a D cup or double D by the time she was 14. I was a C cup by the time I was 14. And I did get some random men approaching me even in like a grocery store. And it is a little jarring and it can be scary when you're that young and like you're not like it's just a little off-putting and I kind of 100% understand the wearing baggy clothes. I lived in sweats and very baggy t-shirts for years because I did not like the attention I got because of my early developed body. So that's less of like a fat girl thing. Granted, I was overweight, so maybe there is a little bit of fat that facilitates early onset of menstruation, that then facilitates early onset of puberty and maybe faster development. I don't know. I think it's far more just like the girls that develop early. It's just one of those things, and there's some girls like her and myself that did not like the attention we got for our rather adult bodies at a young age. So I understand her here.
Options that they do now back then. So um, I'm glad that some things are better for today's teens because I know a few different teenagers that are non-binary or transgender or just don't want to support that beauty standard and that, societal ideal. They just don't feel like it's them. And I love that. I feel like that's the realness that we need in the world. But anyway, it was all about the boobs. Like they all wanted in there. And I became very disconnected from them because I felt like, what the hell does this do for me? They don't do anything for me. But it seemed like everyone else.
You're so smart. I was wrapped up in it. I was like, all right, the boobs are gonna get me attention. And I still was like self-conscious about it because I had boobs that were very large at a very young age, like you did. But I don't think I was like, I don't know, I had a different experience. But you seemed like you kind of like were like, alrighty, like it's about me and I don't really care about these things. So I want to talk a little bit more about like how women's bodies obviously are like objectified, specifically sexually objectified, and like the agency is taken from them. Like they're just things rather than actors or people. But like fat bodies in general, like any one's fat body is so often like seen as just like this sort of like an amorphous blob, like almost like fat doesn't feel, or fat's not a thing. And one of the things that like always stuck out in my mind, and I don't know if we've discussed this before, and I don't know if it's a joke that you heard growing up, but I always heard the joke about like, how do you fuck a fat woman, roll her in flour, and find the wet spot?
Yeah. My abuser liked that joke, which is ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that just was, it's such a dehumanizing thing. Like, it's like, you're not even, like, a thing. You're in, like, a blob of something that gets fucked. Like,
right.
And I think
they're doing you a favor by even fucking you. You're so disgusting.
And I think
I would turn the table and be like, why are you fucking something you don't even see as sexual? Like, what is wrong with you? But anyway.
But that just always really felt so awful whenever I heard that joke, even when I wasn't really all that fat. Like, it's a really gross joke. I mean, if you can call it a joke. Like,
yeah, I don't see the humor in it, honestly. Yeah, maybe we should talk about, you know that sound that happens when two bodies are fucking? I was afraid of that sound for so long.
Oh my gosh.
So long. That is the sound of shame. Or like when you don't have a bra and you turn over too fast and your tits clap.
Yeah.
Or
my belly does that. If I like walk too fast, like my belly can do that, and I like almost want to like hide.
My fat upper arms will occasionally smack back up on to my torso, and I have had lovers say, "What is that?" And I'm like, "It's my arm," and they look at me confused and surprised. But there's this British show called Miranda that I mentioned in the last podcast. Maybe I need to mention it every time. It's on Hulu. She, when it was the boob slapping thing, when someone said, "What's that?" she goes, "Oh, it was a duck. I heard a duck quack." Now they're more concerned that she heard a duck, even though they all heard that it was obviously not a duck. Like, it just cracked me up so much.
Right, so we're about a little less than halfway through this part. We've reached 30 minutes of the recording, though. And I'm really finding myself not having much to say. So if you are interested in hearing the rest of this, there is a fatasfuckpodcast.com. And you can listen to the rest of it there. We left off at 17 minutes 52 seconds. There isn't really much for me to say here. There isn't much for me to talk about. I feel like I've let a lot of the podcast go, and I just don't have anything to really say. So I think we're gonna leave this here. I don't plan on covering the last one, and I don't think that this needs to be several parts or anything. I'm just gonna kind of let it go. Let me know what you thought. If you had any opinions on what was said, if you think that this was something that I should have covered all the way through, I'm kind of curious about that. But overall, like, it's another one of those, like, it's the second time with this podcast where I don't have anything to really say and I'm kind of bored, but it's not the bored that is also enraging the way Unsolicited was. This is just kind of like they're just kind of talking about their experience. I don't have a whole lot to say about anything, so I just don't want to keep playing it and it essentially be a video of you guys just listening to the podcast because I have nothing to say. So I'm going to leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.